Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, for wherever you're joining us from. My name is Angie Judge from Dexibit, and I'm joined by the wonderful Veronika Skyrpal. Thanks for joining us, Veronika.
Thanks for having me today, Angie.
And Veronika is actually standing in for Pierre today. We're going to be talking all about Almanac, understanding the what's on of in and around your location in the calendar, how you use this for your data, and what it means for machine learning for forecasting. But to begin with, I'm going to give a very quick introduction to Dexibit and also take you through a quick housekeeping tour for anybody who is new to Dexibit, and then we'll dive in to talk all about Almanac and go through some new features that have come out in product as well for users that have been using Dexibit for a while. So if you're new to Dexibit, we do data analytics specifically for visitor attractions. So this is both cultural organizations and commercial attractions as well. And we bring together all sorts of data from around the visitor, their experience in your venue's operation. So that's things like footfall, ticketing, CRM, point of sale, e-commerce, social web, weather, and so much more. And with that in Dexibit as a software as a service, you can provide dashboards, reports, insights, and forecasts to your users for internal use. And they are also backed up by a data automation platform. I'll give you a really quick housekeeping tour of what that looks like in product, which is hopefully coming up for you now on screen. And what this looks like in Dexibit is you've got access to build as many different dashboards as you like. You can share those with your team very quickly just by hitting a button. You can turn them into a scheduled email report if you want to push them out reports to their email. And then we've got a library of pre-built visualizations which you can add to any dashboard at the click of a button and then configure them up with the studio. There's some great functions in Dexibit for managing multiple locations and lots of identity and access management that goes behind that. Some beautiful benchmarks for looking at industry data so you can compare and contrast yourself with what everybody else is doing in the sector. And some awesome functionality for diving into very deep insights with your data, right down to things like how many people bought a $25 blue hat in the shop from a particular sales rep on your staff, including a whole pile of stuff around derived metrics added on to the value that you're already getting out of your existing systems. So you can access in this any of your source systems, any field or attribute from those source systems, and then add value in Dexibit to be able to see new insights. You'll also see in here a bunch of machine learning. We're going to touch on this today, a form of AI used for forecasting, and some really cool functionality around looking at things like reviews and what people say and where they come from, and so forth. And lastly, but not least, Dexibit comes with its own query language, DXQL, where you can add in and filter your data down to some very deep levels. And all of that is then available through our API. So with that, I'll pop my screen share off for now because I want to quiz Veronika all about Almanac. And so Veronika, start us off. What is an almanac and what do you use it for? Oh, and you're on mute.
Apologies. Can you see my screen, Angie?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. So Almanac, it's actually one of the favorite little areas of the product personally, and it's a calendar of what's going in, on, and around the location. It includes a variety of items. So, for example, we have public holidays, we have school terms and school breaks, we have internal events, exhibitions, any experiences, as well as external events that might be happening around the location. We also carry third-party data such as a weather feed And all of this is actually used in our forecasting and insights that we provide. So it's a really grunty area that provides a lot of contextual information for our customers, and it's used in our machine learning for forecasting.
Very cool. And so talk us through who should be using the almanac, and what for, when do people use it? What does this look like?
That's a good question. I think everybody should be using the almanac, and actually a lot of our customers, different groups use it, all the different departments, from visitor experience to finance to operations. But just some use cases of how it's used. You can use it for planning and scheduling. So for example, you might be looking at when to schedule your next event. So you'd be looking at the calendar and seeing what else is scheduled in your venue, what else is happening. So maybe you want to optimize your visitation and schedule it on the days when you don't have something else on. So you want to kind of control that capacity and that experience for your visitors. Or I know another use case, a lot of customers do maintenance, and they redesign their galleries and everything else, so they close off certain parts of their locations. And that's another great way to plan forward and figure out when is a good time to shut down a specific area of the location, specific room, whatever else. Maybe even schedule different staff training sessions and big events based on what is happening in the future. So that kind of like future operational planning and scheduling. Another way is, I know it's used very heavily by visitor services. So again, that forward-looking, providing that report of what's happening in the next 2 weeks. So that way you can, again, schedule the right amount of staff, and you can create the right kind of experience based on what's happening, so that everybody in the location is actually aligned on what is happening, what these events are, so that you can create the right themes, the right experience, use the right language to tell that story and craft that overall experience. And yeah, I think there's a couple of more ways, but yeah, it's also used heavily in reporting. So reporting looking backwards, almanac and that information of what has happened is key in setting that context. When looking at data, it's really important to understand why I'm getting these numbers and what was the context around that. So by understanding what's happened, we're able to, or customers are able to make better decisions around, okay, so I had this, and this is why I had this number, or this might be causing this, that kind of like retrospective understanding. And also forward-looking. So when you are, again, planning something into the future, you can have that in your report. So then you can make better decisions going forward.
There's so many different cases, isn't there, between sort of planning forward for the future, looking back on the past, and then sort of reporting and briefing on what's happening right now. So we're talking about quite a lot of data here between the public holidays, the school terms, the weather, the exhibitions, events, sports games, concerts, whatever. Where does this come from?
It comes from a variety of ways. So one of them is actually entering it into the almanac, which is this little area right here on the left-hand side navigation. And that includes default things such as weather and school terms that we provide, or it could come from third-party feeds. We've got a third-party provider add-on that includes event data of what's happening outside the location for a specific area. So that could include, concerts, other scheduled events, sporting games, whatever else, event-driven visitation. And customers can also connect their own sources and bring their own data in. They can connect their, Google Calendar, Outlook, whatever they're using, or even other like event third-party providers. So a lot of our customers do venue hire for weddings or conferences. And so they use a separate system. And again, we can integrate that into Dexibit and bring that into the almanac.
Very cool. Because the big thing that I'm learning with Almanac is that there is no such thing as a one-stop shop for this data, and you've really got to actually at Dexibit, we aggregate data from multiple systems, but you've kind of got to do that within the almanac space because you've got the venue hire stuff and you've got the events that are happening elsewhere and you've got your exhibitions that are in a different calendar, and education has got their own one. And then on top of that, you've got your public holidays and all of your standard sort of things as well. And your notes of what was happening at the time, this particular fire alarm we had or a snow day or whatever. So it's kind of a mixture of all of those things. Hey.
Yeah, it's very, very big. And as you said, there's so many different departments and people within a location that need access to that information. And just having it all in one place, I think, is just super powerful. Yeah.
Well, I can see some new functionality in front of me, the modernization of the almanac, which is long awaited. Do you want to take us through?
Yeah, I'd love to take you through, Angie. We're super excited. So what we've done was we've actually brought the almanac into the dashboards so that now we're providing that really clear contextual information in any dashboard and any report that you have. You can include this little almanac widget. And just like with any of our visualizations and widgets, you can add it from the library. And it's just here at the bottom, or you can search for it and it will pop up for you, and you just click add and it'll pop up. So just as an example, what makes this really powerful, what we've mentioned is a lot of data sources and context is provided in the almanac. And so what we want to do is actually filter out certain things. So when you're creating a specific report, you might not want to have everything. And so you can use this, our DXQL, to filter for things. As an example, sometimes it's important to report on opening hours because these change, depending on what's happening. So it's quite good to have that in the report. But other times you might not want to because you're going to have an opening hour for every single day. So what you could do is you could write like a simple query to remove those opening hours. So for example, title, not like. There you go. And so because I wrote this query, it's removed all the opening hours. So it's just reducing that amount of noise. And again, being able to filter out anything else. Maybe you don't want to see all the, weddings and venue bookings. So again, you can just filter that out. Or maybe you want to search for a specific experience, in which case, instead of the not, you're just going to type in a specific experience. Maybe I'm interested in Southern Lights. And so that should pull up. Oops, Southern. Spelling mistake, apologies. So corrected that. And there you go. It's just pulling up all the experiences in relation to this event that I have on. So super powerful. And you can just click on this little tab here. So that's the almanac. And then you can see a running feed of it. And something else that you can do is you can actually add a note to the almanac. And just before I show you how to do that, a note is very different to what we were talking about in terms of you're running, exhibitions, events, really big things that are happening. A note is just an occurrence that happened in time. So it could be maybe your venue was shut down due to a weather storm, or, it was out for a couple of hours due to some outages that you had, or just anything else like a one-off event. Now, these one-off events are not going to be used in our forecasting, but they're really important to add into that context so that whoever's looking back retrospectively, they can understand why, for example, there was a massive dip in your data on that specific day. Because if you didn't make a note, nobody would understand why that data point is, close to zero. In the same way, sometimes you might have a special like VIP night for memberships, and you'd probably want to add that as a one-off event to explain that peak. So it's just, notes are just one of things to explain the peaks and the troughs. So we can add a multi-day event, which spans more than one day, or we can add a one-day event. So for example, I'm just going to add it for one day, and I'm going to say snowstorm closure, closed all day due to snowstorm. Oops. Oops.
Third
My
time's
spelling's not the best today. Cool. So we've added that note. So I can just scroll down to, I might need to refresh my page. And it takes a little while to load while I'm on Zoom. Where did my note go?
I find it really useful too to search in the almanac feed as well at the top, just for like snow, and that quickly pulls it up.
Oh,
No note, didn't save.
did not save. It's just like the usual. Whenever you're doing a live session, you know, the demo gods are not happy with me today. Okay, so I'll try it again a little bit later. I'll just let it settle. But what's something useful is that this is also available alongside, so I'm just going to expand, all our time series and categorical visualizations, the new ones, so that when you're looking at the expanded view, you can actually see the context of what's happening. Okay, so now all my notes are showing up, of course. But again, so when you're deep diving, you don't have to exit and go to the dashboard to see, okay, what was happening on these dates. You can actually just have a running feed exactly where you are. So I find this really, really handy because it's all just in one place, very easy to navigate and see. So if I just go back, cool. And something else that you can do, and I'm just going to expand here so that you can see better, is you can actually add markers to a chart so that when you're providing these reports, you can actually annotate specific data points on the graph to help communicate to that recipient, you know, that story of what happened on that day. So maybe I want to show the first flags on my graph, and there you go. I've added a note to a chart. This is super, super powerful, very simple to do, but provides great context. And it really helps to just pinpoint to the key ideas or events that you want your recipient to understand so that they can make better decisions, so that they don't have to, you know, understand everything and scroll through all the countless things that you have happening here. Yeah, I think that's all the new things that we have in the almanac.
Cool. That is awesome to see that new functionality coming through. Thank you for that. I love the live demo gods coming into play as well. And so I wouldn't mind just talking about, I know we're a bit shy on time, but just a couple of minutes on like your tips for using the almanac. What are the kind of things that you recommend people do?
Great question, Angie. Oh my gosh, I have so many tips, but okay, let me think of my top few tips. So I think it's very important to differentiate between notes and events. So as I've mentioned, notes are just one of events that are really important to note for that context. However, it's really important to enter your exhibitions, your events, things that are happening like bigger, longer term, because this is what's used for machine learning. Notes are not going to be used in machine learning. They don't impact the forecast, but having an up-to-date almanac of your key events is really, really important because that is going to create a more powerful and more accurate forecast for you. So I think that's something that's really important.
So if it's a scheduled recurring thing, it should be in the almanac as a categorized item. And if it's just something for my own purposes for context, knowledge management, institutional knowledge stuff, then I'm putting it down as a note.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If it's something that's scheduled, that's how machines learn. So when you have these events that are scheduled, that are happening all the time, it provides that context for them. So something else I think is really important is I would give the tip, the customers whose forecasts are doing really well are the ones who actually look at the almanac on a weekly basis. So they just go in and check to make sure that they have all the relevant, again, scheduled events and happenings in there, whether they're happening inside or outside the venue. So because if it's just like a month, you kind of forget, and it's like a lot of work for a month. So I know customers who do quite well with forecasting. They just go in once a week and they look at the almanac and they look, like few weeks to, well, I know some even do it like a quarter out. So they're constantly just checking because new things could be popping up. Although the scheduled events are pretty stable, so they don't usually pop up. Usually that's set like sometimes a year, 2-3 years in advance. But yeah, just making sure it's very well groomed. And I think I've mentioned this before, but when providing that context for the almanac, just using this filter here to figure out what you actually want to communicate to the recipient. Because again, there's a lot of information in here. So being able to narrow down what you're trying to communicate, what story you want to tell, I think would be very helpful. Because, when somebody's reading a report or looking at the dashboard, they don't want to be overwhelmed with information. So you just want to pull out key things for them. Yeah, I think that would be my key tips. Yeah, making it a habit. Yeah, and just, something else that I found very useful is when you're making a note to make it, for example, for VIP nights. So, you have a new exhibition starting, and then before that you might have an opening night for your donors or members or whoever else, and so creating different notes in there to indicate, hey, on this day we actually had a special night for this group of people, and the next night we had a special night, late night opening for these people. So that's really, really useful context.
That's such a good point, that last one, because you've got your sort of major categories that are going into your machine learning model, like the exhibition itself. But then there's like even the exhibition has its own little mini almanac schedule of the different things that are part of that, maybe artist talks or marketing campaigns switch gears into FOMO mode at the end. All of these sorts of things are really useful notes to have when you want to overlay and see how the exhibition performed.
Totally. And I know a lot of marketing departments as well, because we have a feed for like marketing campaigns and news feeds. So again, implementing that and feeding that into the product just provides great context for these users. So just so much you can do with this, Angie.
Well, thank you for those. Those are some great tips in there. And I think you're right, like almanac data can be quite overwhelming because there's so much coming from so many different systems for different purposes as well. So that point around making sure whenever you use it in the feed, you query it down, search it out, just like you would with ticketing data or something. It's a really good one. Cool. So we've probably got time for one, maybe two questions. I know we're nearly at the top of our time. For those on the call, we have just put a note in the webinar chat if you want to drop your questions into Q&A.
Just while we're getting those questions, I think, as you mentioned, Angie, almanac, it can be like overwhelming. But we have all these tools to make it really simple. And I think that's what good, decision-making, data-enabled decision-making is just simplifying things, having all this great context, but then taking the time to look through it, to understand it, and then report it out. So it's actually just a beautiful journey. I really enjoy working with data because, you start up here and then you work through it and you figure it out to something really powerful and meaningful. So I think, everybody who's in the data space is quite used to it and we enjoy it. It's like a little adventure.
We have got a question coming here, Veronika. Can I put my events as a business line into the almanac? So they use Momentous for managing weddings, conferences, and venue rentals that we're hosting on site. How do I connect?
Yes, yeah, we support that functionality. Again, it's just like a third-party supplier, so anything, all the you can integrate anything into the product. Some things are an add-on. So, but in any case, if it's a current customer of ours, please talk to your customer success representative, and we can get that data through.
Cool, because that'd be quite interesting, because that sort of data, it's a bit like ticketing data, where you've got when the event was scheduled, when it was scheduled for, how many expected attendees, what they've paid for it, who the sales rep was at the attraction that sold that, whether the booker is like a consumer, like a wedding couple, or a business like a conference, what location in the venue they've booked for, if there's multiple. So lots of really cool stuff that could happen in that data to visualize and analyze and get insights for, and then also potentially show on the almanac as well.
Yeah, that's right. So something I forgot to mention is that, if we get that data, and it's not just to show it in this almanac widget, to add it as a note, it's actually to create visualizations, so you can have, time series visualization, categorical visualization, pie charts, heat maps, whatever else you need to communicate that data and do that analysis. So yeah, it's quite powerful. And it just like with any data source, we're bringing all the dimensions and all the metrics that's available. So whatever you have, we can bring it in and show it in the product. We're not limiting anything. Yeah.
Superb. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Veronika, and thank you for that great question too at the end there. If you do want to learn anything more about the almanac, feel free to bring it up in your business reviews. You'll be hearing about it this month. And you might have seen this little purple wand on Veronika's screen when she looked at DXQL, which is a great prelude for our next webinar next month, where we'll be talking about the future of generative AI in Dexibit as different ways to be able to interact with your data. I personally can't wait for this one. Very, very exciting stuff. So we'll be digging into that next.
I tried not to use it on the call so that we save it for next month. It was very hard not to use it, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Veronika, and we'll see you all again next month.
Thank you, Angie. Bye.